Hey folks, welcome back to NC State Dendrology. In this video we're going to be talking about Douglas fir, our coastal Douglas fir and also our Rocky Mountain Douglas fir, which are two varieties of the same species. So looking at this plant, you can see that it's split in its range in the central map here. Over here in the interior region in blue, you can see that is where our Rocky Mountain Douglas fir, Pseudotsuga menziesii var glauca, resides. It exists along the Rocky Mountains in that interior zone, usually in these higher elevation points. And this is one of our tall trees that you can usually get above 100 feet in height. And to identify it, we're going to look over at the cone over here. I don't have them in person with me currently, but you can see from this photo that you've got these three-pronged bracts that sit in between each of the scales on this plant. So the scales are flat and they're going to be typically a sort of thin, papery texture to them, but those bracts are really what you want to pay attention to. Those the three-pronged bracts sticking in between the scales. They sort of look like little mice jumping in and out of the scales with their little tails and feet, and these bracts are important, and we're going to be comparing to them the bracts on our other Douglas fir in that they are bent backwards. They're reflexed. So you can see this one right here, that bract is pointing backwards against the scales as opposed to being pressed to them. So that is our Pseudotsuga menziesii var glauca in that blue range on the map. And then scrolling over, we want to talk about Pseudotsuga menziesii var menziesii. This is one of our tallest trees in the world, upwards of 250 feet pretty often. You can see it here along the coastal edge of our map here in Upper Oregon, Washington, and California. It exists in that coastal region where it gets a lot more water from the fog drips off the side of the coast. And so these trees can get a lot larger than its inland variety of Douglas fir. The tallest of this tree ever found was 315 feet tall, and those are trees that we usually see sort of people petitioning to see if this tree might actually be the tallest in the world compared to our sequoias. So looking over here at its cones though, that's what's really going to help you identify this tree out on the final, is that you can look at those bracts. So the scales of this plant are very similar to the scales of our other Douglas fir. They've got that thin papery texture with that rounded edges to those scales. But then you also still have those thin papery bracts that stick in between the scales with those three-pronged bracts. But the difference between the scales on these ones versus the ones on Pseudotsuga menziesii var glauca is that menziesii var menziesii has them pressed to the cone scale, so they're pointing flat. So this is our coastal variety. It's very flat. Bracts flat against the cone scales as compared to our Rocky Mountain ones. So you can just think mountains make the bracts more bumpy, and so they are pointing outwards and up on the cones. So yeah, those are our two Douglas firs that we are learning, which are Pseudotsuga menziesii and var menziesii and Pseudotsuga menziesii var glauca.